Do you know that knot in your stomach, that feeling when you know deep down you should say something? Or maybe make that phone call you've been dreading, or even just trying something, anything new that genuinely scares you. It's a feeling I think almost all of us know, that internal friction. But what if tackling that feeling isn't about suddenly becoming some kind of superhero? Or finding some hidden bravery? What if it's actually about a daily practice, something quiet but really powerful? Today, we're doing a deep dive into the power of small acts of courage. Build bravery and face your fears daily. And yeah, forget the big Hollywood heroics for a minute. This is all about those consistent, sometimes really quiet acts that truly have the power to transform your life. Little by little, we've gathered some really fascinating insights for you. We're drawing from psychology, from the, timeless wisdom of Stoic philosophy, and even from powerful, real stories, people who've built their bravery step by step. Our mission here really is to help you understand how embracing discomfort, and yes, embracing it and taking these small, consistent steps can seriously boost your self-esteem, improve your mental well-being, and ultimately lead you toward a more fulfilling life, a life where you feel more like, well, you. Okay, so let's get into it. When we hear courage, yeah, maybe we think firefighters, soldiers, big public figures making bold moves, and those are brave acts, absolutely. But what if courage is actually more accessible, living in our daily lives within reach for all of us? What is bravery really beyond those big moments?
That's such a crucial point to start with. It's so important to understand that bravery really isn't the absence of fear. Professor Pat Tessichin, who's looked into this deeply, especially within contexts like the Royal Air Forces Association, he puts it perfectly. He says it's about the management or overcoming of fear. And he has this quote that just rings true: feel the fear and do it anyway. What's really telling is that even highly decorated heroes, people we see as paragons of courage, they report feeling terrified, utterly afraid. The difference isn't the feeling of fear, it's the choice they make despite that feeling. It's an action.
Right, and that ties in so well with that Stoic idea from Seneca, right? We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. Just think about that. Our own minds conjuring these worst-case scenarios, these what-ifs, they can have very real effects, completely paralyzing us, clouding what's actually happening. It's often that fear of the imagined future that stops us dead in our tracks.
Absolutely. And physiologically, that feeling, we all recognize the panic, getting hot, shaky, heart pounding. When we're faced with something that isn't actually life-threatening, that's often our body's fight or flight response just being a bit oversensitive. Think of it like a faulty smoke alarm going off for burnt toast. Understanding that it's a physical response, sometimes an overreaction, helps us see those intense feelings aren't always accurate signals of danger. They feel real, absolutely. But recognizing their source allows us to start learning how to face them rather than automatically running away, which leads to the big question, doesn't it? How do we build that resilience if fear is often just noise?
Exactly. So if courage isn't about not feeling fear, and that fear response can sometimes be exaggerated, how do we actually start building this bravery muscle? One of our sources introduces this really useful idea, micro bravery. The author shares this incredibly honest story about realizing she'd spent years as a sort of backdrop in her own life, a self-confessed people pleaser, relying totally on what she calls other esteem, basing her self-worth entirely on others' opinions, which is, incredibly unstable. It took a really painful divorce to force her hand, to make her start making decisions for herself, confronting how she'd always deferred to her husband. She even admitted asking him, "I can't make a decision right now, would you make it for me?" Looking back, she calls that version of herself a wimp.
And that personal journey, it maps so perfectly onto Albert Bandura's work on self-efficacy, which is, at its core, your belief in your own capability to handle specific situations, to succeed in specific tasks. Bandura's research is really clear on this. Performance accomplishments, actually doing the thing, having that mastery experience, are the single most powerful way to build that belief. So every small win, even if it feels awkward or scary at first, it reinforces the idea that, hey, I can handle this. Right. It creates this upward spiral of confidence. The key takeaway for you listening is, bravery isn't usually one giant leap. It's built by collecting these little bits of proof. Each small success rewires you to believe, I can do this, making the next step just that little bit easier.
Okay, so no superhero capes needed. We're focusing on micro bravery. What does that actually look like day to day? What are some of these first steps we can take?
Well, the Courage Daily source suggests things that might seem small, but they're really foundational. Like speaking up when someone says something you disagree with. Not necessarily starting a fight, but just calmly stating your view. I hear what you're saying, and I respect your view, but I see it differently. Something like that. Finding your voice in those small moments. Or, politely correcting a waiter if your order's wrong, instead of just eating it quietly. It even includes choosing things you genuinely like, music, clothes, whatever, even if you know others might raise an eyebrow or comment. The key, they stress, is always to start small. These aren't trivial acts. They're practice reps for your courage muscle.
Yeah, and that story from Sonia McDonald about her daughter really brings that home, doesn't it? Her daughter struggled so much with severe anxiety and depression, partly from bullying. Left school early, years in and out of hospital, just immense struggles. Then, one night, she took this huge step for her just attending her mom's book launch. A room full of people, potentially overwhelming. Her mom noticed a shift in her that night. And then, just a few months later, that single act of micro-bravery somehow led to her speaking in front of 300 students about her own journey, talking about kindness, compassion. It apparently changed her life and inspired so many others. It's amazing how that one small, brave step snowballed.
Precisely. It's such a powerful illustration. These examples show us courage isn't some fixed trait you either have or you don't.
Yeah.
It's like a muscle. You use it consistently, even in small ways, and get stronger. Brave actions in small moments literally build your capacity for bravery when the stakes are higher. It makes you more resilient, more capable when facing bigger challenges down the line. That repeated exposure, followed by realizing I handled that, fundamentally changes things internally.
Okay, this next part I find really fascinating and maybe a bit counterintuitive. What if that feeling of discomfort, the awkwardness, the nerves when you're pushing your boundaries, what if that's not a signal to stop? What if it's actually a sign you're doing something right, that you're actually growing? There was a study where people were specifically told to aim for discomfort, to lean into feeling awkward, nervous, maybe even a bit upset. And guess what? They were more engaged, more motivated, and made way more progress in things like improv, journaling about emotions, even reading news from opposing viewpoints. They embraced the awkwardness, and it unlocked something.
It's a massive reframe, isn't it? We're so conditioned to see discomfort as bad, as something to run from. But by consciously choosing to see it as a sign of progress, a sign of learning, we completely change its power over us. It makes us more willing to take risks, to go deeper. And this fits with other findings too, like how simply relabeling anxiety as excitement can actually improve performance. Think about singers performing better when they told themselves those butterflies were excitement, not fear. You're not trying to get rid of the feeling, you're changing your relationship to it. You're seeing that physical arousal as readiness, not a warning.
And there's actually a structured way to apply this, often called exposure therapy, which helps rewire how your brain responds over time. It's quite practical. First, you really got to understand your own fear response, what happens physically, heart racing, sweating, panic, avoidance, know your pattern. Second, actively work on changing how you see that fear. Remind yourself, okay, this is my fight or flight. It might be overreacting right now. It's not necessarily signaling real danger. Third step, break down the scary situation into tiny, manageable steps, like rungs on a ladder, and rate how scary each step feels, maybe 0 to 100. Fourth, start with the easiest one, the lowest rung, and stick with it. Don't jump off until the fear level drops noticeably, say by half. Fifth, and this is key, allow yourself to feel the fear without distracting yourself. No checking your phone, no trying to feel about something else, just sit with it. Prove to yourself you can handle the feeling, that it passes. And finally, work your way up that ladder, slowly, gradually. Don't rush it. And really acknowledge each step forward as a win, as proof that you're reducing anxiety's hold.
And the really cool thing is this isn't just psychological. As one article points out, exposure therapy literally rewires your brain. Through these repeated, safe encounters with things you perceived as threats, your brain actually learns, okay, this isn't dangerous after all. This leads to a measurable reduction in the fear response. You're building genuine emotional resilience by creating new neural pathways associated with calm, with control, with confidence. It's a biological change.
Okay, so we've talked about understanding fear, managing the physical side, even welcoming discomfort. That's the internal shift. But how do we translate all this into daily action? How do we actually live more bravely? There's a really practical Train the Brave framework with 7 steps. The first 3 are crucial for just setting the stage. Number 1, get clear about what you really want. And don't aim low. Remember that Michelangelo quote. The greater danger lies not in setting our aim too high and falling short, but in setting our aim too low and achieving our mark. So dare to envision what truly excites you, what gives you purpose. Get specific. Second, identify your deepest fear. Name it. Look it in the eye. Is it humiliation, rejection, failure, feeling inadequate. You have to own it. Otherwise, as the saying goes, it owns you. You can't fight an enemy you won't identify. And third, be honest about the cost of inaction. What's the real price you pay by staying stuck in fear? Missed opportunities, regret, lack of fulfillment. Really acknowledging that cost is itself an act of courage, and it fuels your motivation.
Right. Once you have that foundation, the vision, the fear acknowledged, the cost understood, then you move into action. Fourth, break your big vision into small steps. Martin Luther King Jr.'s wisdom applies here. You don't have to see the whole staircase, just the first step. What's the absolute smallest action you can take today or this week that moves you even slightly forward? Make it manageable. Fifth, create accountability. This is huge. Tell someone, a coach, a friend you trust, maybe join a group. Let them know your goal and your small steps. It makes you much less likely to procrastinate when someone else knows. Sixth, walk with giants. Choose your company wisely. Surround yourself with people who think big, who are resilient, who encourage you, and just as importantly, minimize contact with people who constantly feel anxiety or doubt. Your environment shapes you. And seventh, the core of it all. Train the brave daily. This is the habit. Every single time you act despite feeling fear, you weaken fear's grip and strengthen your own sense of capability. Consistency is key. Even one small step outside your comfort zone each day builds powerful momentum. It creates that positive feedback loop we talked about.
To make this even more real, let's look at some examples people shared online about their small acts of bravery. These aren't movie moments, but they're incredibly courageous. One person, struggling with severe social anxiety and agoraphobia, deliberately took a job as a bartender. I mean, think about that constant interaction, needing a confident voice, handling difficult people. They said it felt like going into battle every shift, but they did it repeatedly. And slowly, they started feeling somewhat like a normal human now. That's profound change through consistent exposure.
Wow, that's a powerful example of leaning right into the fear.
Isn't it? Another person talked about repeatedly calling a doctor's office after being dismissed, overcoming that deep-seated people-pleaser instinct to advocate for their own health. They described feeling like they were fighting a dragon with a fork each time they called, but they kept doing it.
Standing up for yourself, especially against perceived authority, takes real courage.
Definitely. And so many people mentioned the courage in just saying no as a complete sentence, no apologies, no elaborate excuses, or speaking up against things like inappropriate comments or mansplaining or other injustices. One person said becoming a feminist gave them that courage, and it felt therapeutic to finally speak up after years of pleasing others. It's about boundaries.
Reclaiming your voice, yeah.
For others, especially those with anxiety, it was about doing it afraid and doing it scared, like forcing themselves to drive despite intense fear, or going to a book club even when health anxiety made every little physical sensation feel like a catastrophe. It's that conscious choice to live, to remind yourself I'm allowed to exist, and refusing to let fear shrink your world.
Choosing life over fear, essentially.
Yes. And one person mentioned initiating a really difficult, vulnerable conversation with old friends to try and deepen the connection, even though they were terrified it might backfire and create distance. But it worked. It made the friendships much stronger, much more authentic, showing that vulnerability can be incredibly brave.
Absolutely. And often rewarding.
And finally, even just asking for help, that's highlighted too. It's often seen as weakness, but it's actually a really brave, practical act. It's about identifying a problem, seeking a solution, and taking action to solve it. It requires overcoming pride or fear of judgment.
That's a great point. Admitting need and seeking support is definitely courageous. And every single one of these examples, whether it feels huge or tiny, builds that self-efficacy we talked about. It creates that positive feedback loop. You face a fear, you manage it, you feel empowered. That makes you more likely to tackle the next challenge and the next. This isn't just about feeling a bit better. It's about fostering a genuine growth mindset. It leads to a stronger sense of purpose, more resilience, and ultimately greater life satisfaction. You're literally changing your brain step by brave step.
So when we boil it all down, what have we learned from this deep dive? Courage fundamentally isn't about not having fear. It's about having the tools, the mindset, the practice to manage it and move through it. It's a skill, and like any skill, it gets stronger with consistent, small, micro-brave actions. And maybe the biggest takeaway, that uncomfortable feeling when you're pushing your edges, that's not a stop sign. That's the feeling of growth. That's progress happening.
Yeah, exactly. The Stoics really nailed it. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. So thinking about that, here's a thought for you listening. What is just one micro-bravery step you can commit to this week? maybe even today. What small act of courage, maybe leaning into a little discomfort or speaking up just once, would make a real difference in your life starting right now? Because that single brave step is where the whole journey begins.